Welcome to Mr. Night Scare, where we uncover the darkest tales of true crime and the chilling mysteries that keep you up at night. If you love unraveling the twisted stories behind the world's most infamous criminals, hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell. Get ready to dive into a world where every shadow hides a secret. Let's begin. Ted Bundy's story begins in Burlington, Vermont, on November 24, 1946. Born Theodore Robert Cowell, he entered the world under circumstances shrouded in secrecy and scandal. His mother, Eleanor Louise Cowell, was unwed, a significant social stigma at the time. To avoid shame, Ted's grandparents raised him as their own child, and he grew up believing his mother was his sister. This revelation, uncovered later in his life, would be one of many factors that shaped his complex personality. Despite these early difficulties, Bundy seemed like an ordinary child. His teachers described him as intelligent and well-mannered. Yet, behind the facade of a normal upbringing, Bundy's darker tendencies began to emerge. He was shy, socially awkward, and exhibited early signs of a troubled mind. Bundy's fascination with violence and control surfaced in his teenage years when he started peeping into neighbors' windows and stealing items from women's homes. These early behaviors foreshadowed the horrifying acts that would later make him infamous. Bundy's outward appearance in adulthood contradicted the monster lurking beneath. Handsome, articulate, and intelligent, he easily won the trust of those around him. He attended the University of Washington, studying psychology, and appeared to lead a promising life. Bundy was even active in local politics, working on Republican campaigns and building a reputation as a dedicated and ambitious young man. During his time at university, Bundy fell deeply in love with a woman who embodied his ideal partner: beautiful, wealthy, and sophisticated. This relationship would leave a lasting impact on him. When she ended things, Bundy was devastated. Some experts believe her rejection fueled his desire for control and domination over women. It was after this breakup that Bundy began his descent into darkness. The early 1970s marked the beginning of Bundy's killing spree. Women began disappearing from college campuses in Washington and Oregon. The victims shared striking similarities: young, attractive, with long, dark hair parted in the middle. Bundy employed cunning tactics to lure his victims. Often pretending to be injured or disabled, he would ask for help, using a cast or crutches to appear harmless. Once his victims were close, he would overpower and abduct them. Bundy's charm and calculated methods made him difficult to suspect. Even when witnesses provided descriptions of a man named Ted driving a Volkswagen Beetle, Bundy remained under the radar. By the time authorities began connecting the dots, Bundy had moved on to other states, leaving a trail of terror across Utah, Colorado, and Idaho. In 1974, Bundy's crimes escalated. He became bolder, attacking women in their homes and even abducting victims in broad daylight. His arrogance grew as he evaded law enforcement, but his luck eventually ran out. In 1975, Bundy was pulled over for a traffic violation in Utah. Inside his car, police found burglary tools, which led to his arrest. A search of his vehicle revealed further incriminating evidence, including handcuffs and a ski mask. Despite his arrest, Bundy's ability to manipulate and charm persisted. He acted as his own attorney during his trial, using his legal knowledge and charisma to sway public opinion. However, the evidence against him was overwhelming, and he was convicted of aggravated kidnapping. While awaiting trial for murder charges, Bundy orchestrated 2 daring escapes, further cementing his reputation as a cunning and dangerous criminal. After escaping custody, Bundy fled to Florida, where he committed some of his most brutal crimes. In January 1978, he broke into the Chi Omega sorority house at Florida State University. In a frenzied attack, he bludgeoned and strangled 2 women to death and severely injured 2 others. Less than a month later, Bundy abducted and murdered 12-year-old Kimberly Leach, his youngest and final victim. Bundy's reign of terror came to an end on February 15, 1978, when he was pulled over by police in Pensacola, Florida. This time, Bundy's luck had run out. The evidence against him was irrefutable, and he was charged with multiple counts of murder. Bundy's trial was a media sensation. Televised for the world to see, it marked one of the first major cases to receive such widespread coverage. Bundy relished the attention, often smirking and making flippant remarks in court. Despite his attempts to charm the jury, the evidence was overwhelming. Bundy was convicted and sentenced to death for the murders at the Chi Omega House and Kimberly Leach. While on death row, Bundy continued to manipulate those around him. He confessed to over 30 murders, providing gruesome details of his crimes. Many believe the true number of his victims could be much higher. Bundy's confessions offered some closure to the families of his victims, but his lack of remorse and chilling demeanor left a lasting impression of horror. On January 24, 1989, Ted Bundy was executed in the electric chair at Florida State Prison. Crowds gathered outside, cheering and celebrating the end of one of America's most infamous serial killers. Ted Bundy's story is a haunting reminder of the darkness that can lurk beneath a charming exterior. His ability to manipulate and deceive allowed him to evade capture for years, leaving a devastating impact on the families of his victims. Bundy's crimes also changed the way law enforcement handles serial killer investigations, leading to the development of psychological profiling and improved communication between jurisdictions. Today, Bundy's name is synonymous with evil. His story continues to fascinate and terrify, serving as a cautionary tale about the dangers of blind trust and the complexities of human psychology. The small town of Black Hollow had long since fallen asleep when the call came in. The operator at the sheriff's office picked up the phone, expecting the usual: a noise complaint, a lost pet, or perhaps a drunken brawl at the local dive bar. But what came through the receiver that night would haunt her forever. A deep, trembling voice whispered, "I've done something terrible. They're all buried in the woods." It was the beginning of the unraveling of one of the most horrifying cases in modern history. The man on the other end of the line was Daniel Kane, a seemingly ordinary mechanic with an extraordinary darkness lurking within him. Over the next several months, the world would come to know him as the Butcher of Black Hollow, a serial killer whose crimes defied comprehension. Daniel Kane was born in 1978 in Black Hollow, a remote town nestled deep in the Appalachian Mountains. With a population of fewer than 2,000, the town was a place where everyone knew everyone, and secrets were hard to keep. Yet Daniel managed to remain an enigma. From an early age, Daniel was different. He was painfully shy and preferred the company of animals to people. His father, a hard-drinking and abusive man, was a looming presence in his life, while his mother was a quiet, submissive woman who did her best to shield Daniel from her husband's wrath. The Kane household was a place of silence and fear, and Daniel learned early on to suppress his emotions. Despite his difficult upbringing, Daniel showed promise in school, excelling in science and mechanics. Teachers described him as gifted but distant. Classmates, however, saw him as a target. He was often bullied for his awkward demeanor and threadbare clothes. The cruelty he endured during these formative years planted the seeds of anger and resentment that would later fuel his horrific actions. By the time Daniel reached adulthood, he had crafted a persona that allowed him to blend in. He worked as a mechanic at the local auto shop, where he was known for his meticulous work and quiet nature. To his neighbors, he was a kind but introverted man who kept to himself. He lived alone in a small house on the outskirts of town, where he spent his evenings tinkering with engines and tending to his garden. But beneath this facade of normalcy lay a mind consumed by dark fantasies. Daniel had developed an obsession with control and power, which he channeled into a secret life of meticulous planning. He began stalking his victims, women who reminded him of the classmates who had tormented him, or the mother who had failed to protect him. He studied their routines, learned their vulnerabilities, and waited for the perfect moment to strike. Daniel's descent into murder began in 2003, when he abducted his first victim, a 24-year-old waitress named Lisa Harper. Lisa was a new arrival in Black Hollow, a free spirit who had moved to the town to escape a troubled past. Daniel lured her into his truck by pretending to have car trouble, a tactic he would use repeatedly in the years to come. Lisa's disappearance sent shockwaves through the tight-knit community. Search parties combed the woods, and her face was plastered on missing person posters across the region. But Daniel had left no trace. He had studied crime scene investigation techniques and knew how to cover his tracks. Lisa's body was never found, and her case eventually went cold. Over the next decade, Daniel claimed at least 14 more victims. Each crime was meticulously planned, and each victim was chosen with care. They were all women in their 20s or 30s, all newcomers to Black Hollow or its surrounding areas. Daniel's methods were chillingly consistent. He would abduct them under the guise of offering help, keep them captive in his basement for days or weeks, and then murder them in a ritualistic fashion before burying their bodies in a remote section of the woods. The FBI eventually became involved, but Daniel's cunning and attention to detail made him a ghost. He used disposable phones, avoided cameras, and even altered his truck's appearance between abductions. Investigators struggled to find any connection between the victims, and the case became a source of frustration and fear. Daniel's downfall began in 2015, when he made a critical mistake. His 16th victim, a college student named Emily Rhodes, managed to escape. Severely injured and traumatized, Emily stumbled into a gas station and alerted the authorities. Her description of Daniel's truck and his chilling basement led police to his home. When officers arrived at Daniel's property, they found a scene straight out of a nightmare. The basement was a macabre shrine, filled with trophies from his victims. Locks of hair, jewelry, and Polaroid photos. In the woods behind his house, investigators uncovered shallow graves containing the remains of at least 9 women. DNA evidence and Emily's testimony sealed Daniel's fate. Daniel's trial in 2017 became a national spectacle. The media dubbed him the Butcher of Black Hollow, and his calm, emotionless demeanor in court only added to the public's fascination and revulsion. Prosecutors painted a picture of a cold, calculating killer who had preyed on the vulnerable for over a decade. The defense, meanwhile, attempted to argue that Daniel's abusive childhood and mental health issues had driven him to commit his crimes. The jury took less than 4 hours to convict Daniel on 16 counts of murder, and he was sentenced to death. While awaiting execution on death row, he confessed to additional murders, bringing his known victim count to 22. Some experts believe the real number could be even higher. The story of Daniel Cain continues to haunt Black Hollow. His crimes shattered the illusion of safety in the small town and left scars that will never fully heal. Forensic psychologists have studied his case extensively, hoping to understand what drives someone to commit such atrocities. His story has also led to changes in how missing person cases are handled, with greater emphasis on interagency cooperation and the use of technology. Today, Daniel's name is synonymous with evil. Documentaries, books, and podcasts have explored every aspect of his life, from his troubled childhood to his horrifying crimes. But for the families of his victims, no amount of analysis or media coverage can bring back what they've lost. The case of Daniel Cain serves as a grim reminder that monsters can hide in plain sight. The quiet mechanic with a kind smile and a love for gardening was, in reality, a predator of the worst kind. As the town of Black Hollow slowly rebuilds, its residents hold on to one hope: that the lessons learned from this tragedy will prevent another Daniel Cain from emerging in their midst. Thank you for watching Night Scare, where the shadows tell their darkest secrets. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more chilling stories. Until next time, stay safe and stay curious. Night holds more than it reveals.